Frank Isola, David Dennis Jr., Woody Page, Clinton Yates. We've got the rankings and the bracket, where ones are ones, twos are fives, nines are fours. We'll make sense of it. At Golden State, Boston tonight, Jason Tatum's been the hottest player in the league. What he's got in store for Steve Kerr tonight. We'll go around the horn.
Took that bracket off the toughest guy in Essex County. That was the line.
I love it. Rankings are straightforward. Oregon, Ohio State, Georgia, Miami, Texas, yada, yada, yada. But I will not yada, yada over the best part, the bracket. BYU gets the 4 seed as the presumptive Big 12 conference champ. So they get the bye. And now you begin to see how the road through a bracket could shape in these expanded playoffs. Looking for the number one takeaway from the number one playoff preview around the horn to Mr. Clinton Yates.
My number one takeaway is that this format is, in fact, genius. That little wrinkle of the byes go to the top 4 ranked teams that are conference champions and not just the P4 adds such an element of change to what you might want. And from a matchup standpoint, look at number 5, Ohio State. They're the number 2 team in the country. They'd get to play the lowest ranked team. And if they advance after a home playoff game, they thus get the then lowest ranked of the top 4. That is a great place to be. And quite frankly, if you're not in the business of thinking you want a week off, there are so many different options for how this is going to go and so many different things for what teams might prefer to actually have from a matchup standpoint. This is genius. It's worked out well. I didn't know what it was going to feel like until I saw the actual teams in place. This is a good system in my opinion.
Woody Page, around the word to you.
I'm loving me some playoffs. I think the 12-team playoff is just working out perfectly. You know this, Tony. You and I have been talking about a 12-team, 8-team playoff for 18 years.
We have.
And Tim Kalishaw fought us all the way, but I'm sure he's even loving us now. But I think what makes it interesting, at the beginning of the season, I said to you, I thought there would be teams that would lose 2 games that would make it. Well, look at Alabama, for instance. We thought they were dead on arrival a couple of weeks ago, and they're still right there in the mix. And I think it's exciting that we can have a Boise State and a BYU in the conversation. I think that makes sense. And I think this process of having home games during the first round, that makes a lot of sense, too. You won't have the empty seats that we normally see. I think this is a perfect scenario.
David Dennis Jr., around the horn to you.
Yeah, this is a resounding success for college football if you look at it from a standpoint of them raising the stakes of every single game that happens from now until the end of the season. As interested as I am in those 12 teams there, the possibility of Alabama and Miami playing, things stay that they are right now, what's most intriguing to me is that the stakes for the teams that are knocking on that door, you have elimination playoff games happening as soon as this week. LSU and Alabama, which is already a rivalry, is an elimination game. You have Ohio and Indiana, who's going to be playing soon. You have these big matchups that were already going to be major marquee matchups are now de facto playoff games in addition to the 12 teams that are in the playoff. And then you have a team like Colorado who may even sneak in. There's just so many more storylines that are added into it just by having a bracket on a piece of paper.
And Frank Isola.
You know, I love what Woody has said. I like the way he looks. He looks like Dieter from Cologne, Germany. But he's right about, for 20 years, those of us with common sense have been saying, have a bracket. What do people love about the NCAA basketball tournament? You have a bracket that people could fill out. More importantly, you have some underdogs in there. I like the fact that they gave a little nod to some of the little guys. Indiana, which is, let's face it, a basketball and a soccer school. You even have, of course, David just mentioned Colorado has a chance to get in. What they have done with this format is sensational. I love the idea of the home playoff games in the first round. Give Heather some credit. She had it nailed the other day. She had Penn State, Notre Dame as a possible first-round matchup, which would be unbelievable.
I want to get back to something Clinton Yates said. The strategy here, or maybe just what you do you want that bye, or do you want to play a game the week before against the last team in if you're Ohio State in this instance?
Here's the thing, Tony. It's not like the pros where you've got buys built in or whatever. It's just a different type of setup. And I don't know if I would want that if I was a college team to be away from it for a week to come back. I might want to keep the momentum rolling depending on what my program was. It's interesting.
Well, We know what's going to happen. One of those teams that gets a bye is going to lose, and the coach is going to blame it on the fact that they didn't get to play the week before. I think if you're on a roll, you want to play in one of those games. You don't want that
David?
bye.
Well, the beauty of it is unknown, right? That's the beauty of the first time you have this. We don't know if that gap will make a difference or not, and it's going to be like this beautiful chaos that we're going to watch over these next few weeks as we're watching an experiment of college football play out in real time.
I want to buy because I don't want to be in a situation where I might lose in that first game, particularly at home. So I think having the buy gives you an extra week off, but it's not like the old playoffs where you sat on your butt at home for a month before you played another game.
That's true. And just for the record, I love this look today, Woody Page. I see a lot of myself in you. I mean, you look like a cat burglar, and it's outstanding. Outstanding.
You're from Italy. He's from Germany.
We'll move on. Ball night.
Different.
Golden State, Boston. The two teams are 6-1 and 7-1 respectively. That's great. And also the Jason Tatum revenge game for being benched at the Olympics by Steve Kerr, maybe. Tatum hasn't taken the bait on any of this, hasn't addressed it, didn't give it any oxygen. Kerr was a bit cheeky, though, saying he's excited because he's going to get applauded by the Boston fans. Frank, do you think this game means more to Tatum or Boston fans or Kerr? Or is it more about the window that these two teams have provided so far this season?
Yeah, it means a lot to Jason Tatum. And if you're Steve Kerr, your job as the Olympic coach, you can only do one thing. You can only win a gold medal. A lot of pressure. You have a great team. He won it. But Tatum did get benched in 2 of those games. And Jason Tatum, I know what you guys, what's the big deal? There's 82 games in an NBA season. Can we have one game that's like this where you have a little drama between a head coach and a player? And Jason Tatum's got a little Michael Jordan, Kobe Bryant in him. He's not going to say it. He's going to do it out on the court. And Jason Tatum has played like an MVP. He has a right to be upset. He won a championship, and then he's the guy getting a DNP in 2 Olympic games. I don't have a problem with what Steve Kerr did, but I get
All right,
Jason
so you think Tatum's going to be motivated tonight. You called him Michael Jordan.
50.
Okay,
50.
All right. Yeah, David Dennis Jr., how about you?
Let me pull out. This is what you can't see is a very tiny violin for the fans in Boston who, poor Boston fans, one of the 3 players who made it to the Olympics didn't get playing time. This is such a travesty that this happened right after they had a parade for their championship. To me, this is about the Golden State Warriors and seeing how real this team actually is. They're 6-1. Kerr and that depth has been tremendous. The 12, 13 player deep, a rotation that he's had. They're the 2nd-ranked defense in the league right now. They haven't played that many great teams. This is their first true test, and we'll see how real they are in the Western Conference.
Woody Page.
I think it's about Steve Kerr. I mean, he's got the momentum of the Olympic Games and the start that they've had and the way they were able to actually win games without Curry in the lineup. And you got Buddy Hyde averaging more than 20 points. He hadn't done that since early in his career. He's got to be excited about this. I like the Warriors to show us what they're made of tonight in Boston.
And Clinton Yates.
I think this is about the Warriors, but let me say quickly, Boston Celtics fans, this kind of ridiculousness about the Olympics is beneath you. The entire point of being a Celtics fan is pointing to the banners in the rafters, not worrying about what happened en France over the summer. That said, what I am most interested in seeing is what this Warriors team looks like in its current phase. Have they moved on from what the Klay Thompson situation is in terms of who they can be as a squad? What does an older Draymond look like? That depth that David referred to, is it going to work? Steve Kerr is the coach that I trust the most in the NBA when it comes to these kinds of things, and I'm very intrigued to see how a matchup like this against an opponent like the Celtics works out.
Right, guys, Soli, you want to get back in?
Come on, Clinton. It's the first Wednesday in November. It's Boston. This is what Celtic fans do. I'm 100% behind it. It's a long season. They're the most dominant team. Very likely they're going to be playing in June and lifting a trophy again. Let them have their moment. Can they be angry at somebody? It just can't always be the Miami Heat and Eric Spoelstra and Jimmy Butler. Let them move on to somebody else, and now it's Steve Kerr in the league. I'm all for it.
The tag-on team might get sold as well. There's a lot bigger things going on.
Why could you be upset with fans for supporting their guy, Clinton Yates?
Yes, they are supporting their guy when he plays for their team.
I told him,
that's what I'm saying.
Predict a 50-point game for Jason Tatum. Don't think I didn't hear that. David Dennis Jr., you want to put anything on the line here?
Yeah.
I'm going to predict that this will be the only time we hear somebody say that Tatum has Jordan and Kobe in his DNA. Frank, I'm not going to let that slide.
Right.
Okay, take a break.
Come on, what are we
be a
doing?
bad word around here.
And the man won the championship. We'll take a break right here.
Look at his resume.
Buy or sell, we start with the NBA's suspension of Joel Embiid. 3 games for shoving Philadelphia Inquirer columnist Marcus Hayes. Once again, here was the reported exchange. Next time you bring up my dead brother and my son again, you're going to see what I'm going to do to you, and I'm going to have to live with the consequences. Embiid's hands were on Hayes. Reportedly, there was a shove. Once again, here's Hayes writing about the inflection points of Embiid's career, birth of a son, passing away of a brother, and then, well, in order to be great at your job, you first have to show up for work. End quote. Clinton, what are your thoughts on the 3-game suspension for Embiid?
You know, it's an unfortunate situation. With all due respect to Hayes, nobody would have even known about this column had this particular situation not unfolded. Number 2, that cannot happen if you're Joel Embiid. You're one of the faces of the league. You're the face of the franchise, and I understand. But I will say this is a scenario in which being against the rules versus being flat out wrong are 2 different things. Ancient African proverb, you ain't just going to be talking to folks any old kind of way. And I think that's a lot of what Joel Embiid feels here in terms of the topic addressed. It was sensitive. He went over the line. And Hayes deserves an apology from Joel himself.
Woody Page.
Yes, Clinton, as a longtime columnist, I can tell you I've been pushed, shoved, I've been dressed down in locker rooms, I've been banned from locker rooms, but I never reached the point in my career where I would talk about somebody's family or someone who had died that was so close to you. I think you leave it to information involving their career, maybe their salaries, which caused a problem for me once when I said a guy wasn't worth the money he was getting paid, and he accosted me on a court before a game. But I think that the columnist went over the mountain here, and he should have been edited by somebody above him saying, you know, this is really not the right way to go. But Embiid kind of expected this reaction from the league because he said, I'll take whatever happens. And that's exactly what he got, was a 3-game suspension. He wasn't probably going to play in those 3 games anyway. He'll be receiving a fine that could be worth $1 million, however. But I think the journalist was wrong here, and the player wasn't right. But I understand protecting your family and your friends.
David Dennis Jr.
2 things can be true here. 1, the league absolutely has to suspend Embiid. You can't have a precedent of players putting their hands on journalists. The other thing that's true here is I don't know many people, myself included, who wouldn't be compelled to want to put hands on somebody who wrote in a published article something about my child and my deceased sibling. Like, that is just a human interaction there that is hard to say that I'm going to be peaceful in that situation. We've seen what the NBA has done to Embiid. We've seen the punishment. My question then is, what about the journalist? What about the Inquirer? What about the institution of journalism that allowed somebody to write a paragraph that actually is not necessary in the article? You can take that paragraph out and the same point gets across. It was put in there to be incisive and to, you know, draw the ire of Embiid. Who's going to talk to the journalists about this? What happens to the editors, the copywriters? There is a long list of people who approved something as disgusting as that being put on paper, and something needs to be done about that, whether it's, you know, access to the locker room or their own version of apologies, because that is
Do you believe that's
unacceptable.
in the NBA's purview? Because that's what we're talking about. The NBA has suspended Embiid. Do you believe that's in their purview?
No. The NBA does not necessarily have that, have that ability. But somebody within that organization, that journalistic organization,
I understand
has
now.
to
You
take
had said
responsibility for that.
credentials being removed or something like that.
Yeah.
All right. Frank Isola, your view of this?
Well, I don't think I would have led with that or led a column with that. But also, a month earlier, Embiid did an unbelievable thing where he had an event which was dedicated to his brother, and there was a long story about it. And I think, that whole situation was out there. Plus, remember, too, Embiid, for really the first time, is getting heavily criticized. So something like that was going to trigger him. I've covered Embiid for a long time, gotten plenty of verbal spats, never had an altercation. I would think that Marcus isn't happy that the player got suspended because you still don't want to be part of the story. The league had to do this, though. It's sending a message to all the players in the league. You want to get in an argument with somebody over coverage? That's fine. You can't cross that line and get physical.
Journalism is not a crime. I just want to reiterate that. But we still very much live in the real world, and the FAFO factor is not something that anybody can ignore, especially not these days.
Buy or sell, too. Brian Cashman on the incoming Juan Soto sweepstakes and the Yankees placing it.
We certainly have an interest in retaining him, and we'll put our best foot forward there. But at the same time, that'll either lead to us retaining him and signing him back, or we'll be forced to go to a different direction if we can. And if we can't, there's a lot of different players in this marketplace that can positively impact this roster in different ways.
Frank, do you hear urgency there? And do you think the Yankees are more or less in play to bring Soto back?
I see Yankee beat writers in the background thinking, please, God, get this over by Thanksgiving. I think it's going to go on for a while because Scott Boras is his agent. Juan Soto, it's been out there before that he can move around. And here's what's at play. Remember this, folks. The New York Mets are very much interested in Juan Soto. If you're Cashman, if your last name is Steinbrenner, do you want to lose this player to the crosstown New York Mets? Ooh, that can get a little dicey.
But how did you hear Cashman there?
I think it's all negotiation. And I think at the end of the day, just like what happened in the winter last year, the Steinbrenners will get involved and he'll be signed.
I heard him as a guy who's standing up to Boras and basically saying, listen, Juan Soto might be a big deal to you, but look around the league. You've got guys like Ohtani who play two positions who have changed the market up top. And look at the very right fielder on the team you just lost to in the World Series. Maybe in Cashman's opinion, dealing with this guy in terms of as if there's no other option just doesn't make sense because the competition right there on the field proves it. Don't get me wrong. Juan Soto is a star. He would be a gem in the Bronx if he was there for a long time. But I do think there is some residual effect to what literally just happened on the field in terms of the negotiations they're going to go through.
Okay, that's what I want to get to. You don't feel that Cashman showing urgency then, a necessity to sign Soto?
I think he legitimately believes that they can do without him, yeah.
I'm selling his message. I'm selling the way he presented it. When he's talking about, well, we can go out and get other players, he should have been commending the season that Soto had for them and saying, we really want this player back. It's like the Yankees are, and their brand is stronger than he is, and I don't see it at all. No wonder he wants to say, I'm going to listen to a bunch of other people. Yeah. He should listen to Cashman instead of Cashman.
And David Dennis Jr. All right, Woody, there you go.
I am selling this lack of urgency. Anytime Cashman opens his mouth to talk about Soto, it should have three words: please, baby, and please. You need to be begging to have this dude coming back. We've seen what Aaron Judge has done in the playoffs. We've seen that Juan Soto is the best player there that's going to get you to that next level and keep you there. You need him there. This is giving me vibes of Jerry Jones being very nonchalant about Dak and CeeDee Lamb, and see where that got them, because you have this brand that is attached to your name, but players can move and go somewhere else. You need to be begging for Juan Soto to stay with the Yankees.
Yeah. Word to the wise, Juan Soto. Remember what Robinson Cano did? Went out to Seattle. He basically disappeared. I'm not saying that's going to happen to Soto, but a Dominican player in the Bronx.
Whoa. You the veiled threats now? You're going to go to the Seattle Mariners and disappear? What is that? Let that be the last word.
With the fishes.
Clinton Yates, David Dennis Jr., thank you for your time today. Woody, I didn't even see the glasses in this. Now, this is a complete look.
It's showdown time.
German real glasses architect, Woody Page.
Dankeschön.
Woody Page, Frank Isola, good luck in showdown.
And in most cases, the people that are negative and voicing their opinion are the same ones that can't pay their own bills. They're not taking care of themselves. They're not taking care of their own family. They're not taking care of their own job. But they have an obligation to speak out and complain about others because it makes them feel better. But then in the end, when they go to bed at night, they're the same failure that they were before they said anything negative about anybody else.
Woo! That was Mike Gundy on Monday talking about Oklahoma State fans. He's now apologized. Woody, all forgiven?
No, not at all. It may not be fireable, but it's a fightable offense, and the school should dock him some of his paycheck. You don't call people that are fans of your team failures who can't pay their bills. You're the failure. 0-6 in conference play.
Frank Isola?
Yeah, I don't know. Is he trying to get fired? I mean, you don't insult the host of this show, and you don't insult the paying customers. And all kidding aside, that's really insulting what he said about them. And you know what? He sounds like a guy that wants out, and maybe they should push him out.
Wow. You go after the fans, you're going to be sitting with them real soon. Isn't that the old expression? Split the point, move on. Joe Burrow scowling on the bench after throwing 5 touchdowns this past week. That made the rounds because it didn't seem to jive with a great game and a great win. He says he scowls because he's a leader. Frank, scowl or no scowl?
You know what? That's a scowl for me. Dan Marino did it. Tom Brady did it. That look is, we should be a lot better than we are. That's what that look says to me.
Woody Page. Yes, that's all I needed from you, Woody Page. It really brings the full look together. What an incredible look. Woody, I think this is the one you stick with for life. Take the FaceTime, my friend.
On the show today, Colorado's been mentioned by two other panelists. Let me tell you the real story here. Is it possible that they run the string, end up with only 2 losses, and make the playoffs? And in addition to that, they have the Heisman Trophy candidate that could win that trophy. They have a quarterback that could be the number 1 pick in next year's draft. And is it possible that Neon Deion could end up as primetime coach of the year in the NCAA? Everybody thought it was a myth last year. He's brought the goods this year, and he's doing it for Colorado.
Everybody?
That never happened.
Everybody? If the Fighting Primes make the
Maybe
playoffs,
you'll win
y'all are going to be
Coach of the Year
sick of
again.
me.
And Indiana, who's undefeated right now for Coach of the Year?